Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we have a special guest, Dr. David A. Lewis. And for those who are here for the first time or you have been joining us for the conversations so far, please go ahead and share this conversation. I know you will get something from it, and we're just looking forward to having a great conversation. But before I get into what we're going to be talking about today, and even before I give Dr. Lewis the opportunity to share with us more about himself, I'm just going to briefly introduce Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis is currently the principal of Wrightwood School. He's also an adjunct instructor, and he's also the founder and coach of Lewis Educational Leadership and Administrative Coaching. And for those who are here, I'm sorry for not introducing myself for the first time, especially. My name is Dr. Richard A. Cross, and I'm the founder of the Black Male Impact. And today we're going to be talking about honoring our legacy, the importance of education and positive identity. And we just, I think you should get a pen and paper because something you will benefit from today's conversation for sure. So before we get into the questioning, I'll just ask Dr. Lewis to share more about himself before we get into today's conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. And thanks everybody for joining in this evening. My name is David Lewis. I am a native of Chicago, Illinois, born and raised here. I work with the Chicago International Charter Schools, which is a school that is also run by and authorized by Chicago Public Schools. I am not a product of Chicago Public Schools. I grew up in the south side of Chicago in the Inglewood neighborhood, which is now considered a pretty rough neighborhood. And at that time, I didn't think that it was a rough neighborhood. I attended parochial school, Catholic school all of my life, grades K through 12, and then a predominantly white institution. My educational story, which I find very interesting, is I started working in education as a admission counselor at Elmhurst University. He's the first African American admissions counselor, and sitting in a room and space where Caucasians were talking about people of color, black students and students of color did not meet the criteria for admission because they didn't have the skill set needed to attend the university. But I was there. I had a great education, I thought. So I decided not to go to law school for a number of reasons. One, my family wouldn't pay for it. My father told me, if you want to continue your education, you need to find the funds for it. So I went into education as a teacher because I wanted to make an impact and see that children who looked like me had the educational experiences that I had, and be prepared to have access and choice and do the things that they wanted to do. I wanted the children that I taught to have the same kind of experience that I had and would want for my own children. So that's a little bit about me and my journey into education. I've taught, been a classroom teacher, taught science, been an administrator, been a director of teaching and learning, a CEO of a network, and now back as principal of Wrightwood Elementary School.
Man, and that is great. And you said something that I find very interesting and very important.
Hmm.
When we get an opportunity, and not only the opportunity, but when we see there is a gap and we are in position, we should try our best to fill that gap. Because you were
Agreed.
granted an opportunity to be educated in a space where it wasn't the norm, and you
Hmm.
realize how important it is to give and prepare young black and brown kids to get to that space and feel comfortable in the space, because it's one thing to get there, but it's also a next thing to feel like you belong there, and you feel more like you belong when you are confident and when you have someone to prepare you, someone who have walked the path. I think that is really interesting, not just interesting, but also commendable of you, even to divert from law school and to take the path to educate the next generation.
Well, thank you. And I think part of it was a matter of necessity. And I think back to when I was teaching eighth grade in a school in Chicago, which was considered in the what do we call it at that time? It was in the low end,
Okay.
African American school surrounded by projects. And I had taught eighth grade. And I remember many of my children not reading on grade level. And at this particular time, we're talking about the 80s. My kids were 14, 15, some 16 years old, ready for social promotion in eighth grade. Many had children. I was young, right out of college. Many of my girls had babies, and boyfriends were older than I was. But one of the things what came to my mind and impressed me was that if you give children something to do and have high expectations for them, they'll rise to the occasion. Kids don't fail us, we fail them. I always think about this experience. At that time, there were a lot of textbooks in the classrooms, and kids would draw on the pages of textbooks, and I couldn't figure out why would you write on the pages of textbooks. And anybody who's of age and saw textbooks in black schools, they would draw on the pages, and they did that because they didn't want to read the words on the page,
Oh, wow.
and they thought that that would keep them from having to read the words on the page. So I would secure and save one book and just pass that book around and say, we're all going to read from this one book.
Wow.
You're not going to escape. So you have to remove the barriers and let kids know that, hey, I'm in this for you, and we're going to find a way to make it happen.
You said something that is really interesting and for all educators that they should keep in mind, and that is having high expectations of the students.
Mhm.
Because, as you said, we don't fail the students. The students don't fail us; we fail them.
All right.
And having that high expectation, I think, is really important. But also, it comes from your observation, because you see where there was where something was happening that you could have prevented them from skipping out on reading. So observation is really important, especially in the classroom, especially as an educator, because there are going to be students that's going to be coming there who will try their hardest to state what they're supposed to do. And I'm going to jump right into the questions,
Okay.
and we're going to be here for an hour. So those who are here with us, just stay tuned. So we're going to have this conversation, and hopefully you get something beneficial from the conversation. Well, I know you will, but so please go ahead and share this conversation. So my first question to you, which is on honoring the legacy of and being that we in Black History Month. So, who are the Black men whose sacrifices and ambition directly impacted your journey, and how do you honor them in your work today?
I would say that personally, the black men who shaped me um, and who shaped me and who were the men who loved me enough to expect more from me were my family, my grandparents, my father, my uncles, and beyond that, the community, people in church, the people that I saw every day, every Sunday in church, principals. And then as I grew older in life, my frat brothers. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, and the men that I met through my frat who became my extended family and showed me what manhood really looks like, and what manhood looks like when nobody is watching. And that's part of the legacy. To be a man, you have to be a man at all times, and how to treat people and how to keep your word and how to, stand firm in your values. I remember my father always telling me, you have nothing but your good name. Your good name is something that you always have. And I always believe in keeping my word, doing what I say I'm going to do, and just making that happen. Professionally, I honor them by creating spaces for Black boys and Black men to, be protected and prepared to lead and to have roles of leadership. I invest my time in mentoring them, and I work with emerging leaders to make sure that they have an opportunity to be in spaces that I've been in and help them prepare for leadership opportunities at the same ways others prepared me. So that's how I believe that I honor that legacy.
And that is good. As you said, we want to maintain our values not only when we're in public, but also when no one is watching. And as you said, that's one way to honor those who have instilled great values in us. But also, as you stated, creating safe space
Hmm.
for Black males. But how do you, when it comes to the safe space, right? Is it just for younger kids or for all males, high school, middle school, especially when you're doing the mentoring?
Well, I would say mentoring happens on a number of levels. I would say for it happens for students that I work with in terms of safe space to let them know that they have a voice in the
Okay.
building, that they have someone who they can come to and talk to. I don't try to be a friend to the students that I'm not their buddy, I'm not their friend, I'm a trusted other. And that's what I think people are looking for in a mentor from an adult, someone that they can trust. For the adults that I work with, the men of color, trying to provide spaces for them to give them insight on how I, achieved my journey and where I am and how I got there and how they can get there if that's what they aspire to be. So that's what that safe space looks like to me, is sitting down and sharing my story and sharing what they can do to get to the same place. I've never been in a space with my colleagues where I think that I'm the only one who needs to be in that room. I had a friend of
That's good.
mine say one time that, no, people don't want to share their space or share the spotlight, but it's not my spotlight. It can be anybody's spotlight. If you
Correct.
aspire to have it, it can be yours. Given my age and everything else I've done, I know that leadership is something that is, going to be continual. It's not the end, and I'm not going to be the leader at all times. So I'm about building a space for someone to come into and fill the gap where I may leave off.
Well, and that is, man, that is so important and a great reminder not to be the only one
Hmm.
in the space. We should want to see others like us where we are. Because I think, it's just something that, we have to be intentional about as we go forward, especially when we can look at the current climate today. But my next question to you is
But can I say something, Dr. Cross?
yes,
I
go
think
ahead.
it's important for people to understand that it's not about, I'm not afraid to share the space, but I want you to find your own space. Don't
Yeah.
try to rule my space. Get your own space.
Well, yeah, but not, you're not
Yeah,
afraid for
don't
more.
crowd me, and I won't crowd you, but I'll help you find your space.
Yes, yes, but yes, and I understand, where, but you're not afraid to make sure they are present.
Yes, and help them find a space for them, find their own space. There can't be. I have a saying: too many chiefs and not enough Indians.
Correct.
I need to be. We need to make find your own chieftain.
Well, but you're teaching them how to become
Yes,
the
I would
leader
hope.
that they're supposed to be.
I would hope.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So, my next question to you is what do you believe was the greatest price previous generations paid to expand educational access for us?
Um, I think the cost of opportunity. I think the greatest price they paid was I believe that I'm able to walk into schools and universities and leadership spaces, and this price was paid for by people who were denied access, people who were denied dignity and safety. And I carry that history with me. I think about, the civil rights movement and, people trying to get into schools and universities. I think about, James Baldwin, our crowns have been bought and paid for, and all we have to do is to wear them. So the price that my ancestors have paid to get into schools, and particularly this month at my school, we're focusing on HBCUs, the formation of HBCUs, because we weren't able to have our own.
Correct.
So I think that price that was paid for us to have access to an education. People will say that HBCUs are diploma mills. They're not diploma mills. They're providing a place where we as a people have had opportunity to get what others have denied us. So I think that's the price that was paid, that denied access, denied dignity, and denied safety. And I carry that with me with humility as I move in my life.
And that's I really appreciate that. And as a leader, you demonstrate it because I see that's the work you do. I see you share it on social media, because you're not just saying it, you are representing what you state. So that leads me to this next question. What does education mean to you beyond degrees and credentials?
Um, Education gave me the confidence, the voice, and the courage to challenge systems I once may not have known about or felt powerless. I learned early on about Malcolm X and saying that education is the passport to the future. My parents always taught me that people can take anything from you, but they can't take your education and your knowledge and your learning from you. That's something that you have and will always be with you. Professionally, education is how I help students and teachers move from compliance to agency, to be agents for themselves. I push instructional teams to create learning experiences that allow students to question, to explain, to think critically. In my doctoral mentoring, I encourage candidates to use their research to influence policy and practice and not just to earn credentials. So, education for me has not just been about getting a credential and letters behind my name, it's been about the ability to think, the ability to change, and the ability to just be a better person.
And which is really important, especially when it comes to change. As you mentioned, the quote by Malcolm X:
Hmm.
"Education is the passport to the future." That means it's beyond the credentials that we have. We
Hmm.
should use the credentials to help others to realize what is possible. Because for some of us, we may not have started with what some people would consider the opportunity. Some people do start in an unfavorable situation, and the education, should be used as a tool. Like, I have done it, not to say I would say because I have done it, you can do it too, but because I have gone through it, I understand what it takes, and I believe you too have it in you to achieve beyond the ordinary. But have any of your students from the doctoral, especially from the doctoral, who have the doubt that they don't think they can?
I don't think that they can. I think that they don't recognize the ability within them. I
Okay.
think they get so caught up in the moment of having to deal with the compliance of writing so many chapters and filling so many pages and doing so many things that sometimes they lose sight about the passion of their work and what they really want to do and the impact that it will have long term.
Man,
And it's my job, when I work with them, it's my job to help remind them that, and I tell my doctoral students, write from your heart, write what you're passionate about, write what makes you feel good. And I think when they do that and put that work and put that feeling into their research, it makes a difference.
yes, that was what my advisor told me. And so, lucky for me, I had my advisor from I started. And
Mm,
so everything that I wrote from my first paper to my
mm,
last paper was on the same subject. So I was
mm.
being prepared early because I kind of knew what I wanted. But it's just as you stated, that is to write from your heart the thing that you're passionate about, and that will help you to go through the process. And that's a great reminder, which leads me to my next question, which is, and you kind of mentioned it earlier
Mm.
about high expectations, but how have high expectations shaped? No, that's not the question. But before I get to that question, let me ask this question: how do you see their ambition living through you today? The people before you, the ancestors. How do you see their ambition living through you?
Um, I think I see it in honor. Personally, I feel it's my responsibility to honor the dreams of the people in my family and the community who never had the choices that I have. I think about my family. Every member of my family went to HBCU. They
Oh,
went
wow.
to a school in Mississippi. I'm one of the first ones that didn't go to that school. So I'm honoring them by continuing my education because they, decided that long, long ago that education was important. and it's something that we needed as a people and what we needed as a family. So I honor them by the choices that I make and the choices, the things I do that they may not have had an opportunity to do. Professionally, that ambition shows up in how I lead for sustainability. I don't just lead for the moment, I lead for sustainability. I plan beyond one school year. Many people laugh at me. I plan far ahead of time. I build leadership structures, and I have my teachers have a voice. My leadership team has a voice. I develop people who may one day, replace me, because leadership is about, as I said before, continuity, not control. I look at leadership as a continuity spectrum, not a control issue. Many people think that I am a control freak and I micromanage, but I know that there will be someone beyond me, but I want to put systems in place that work beyond me. So that's how I honor my ancestors.
Well, and that
Building
is great.
something that's going to last.
Yes, the sustainability is important, but you said something really valuable, I believe, that is to give your leadership and staff a voice. And I think, them having a voice, um, is important
Hmm.
in the space that they feel as if their contribution matter. Which leads me to the question I was about to ask earlier. How have high expectations shaped your discipline, standards, and leadership?
I view high expectations as a form of love.
Okay.
Um, High expectations for me has been a form of love. Personally, high expectations were how I learned discipline, self respect, and accountability. I learned that at home. I learned that from my parents. My parents had high expectations for me. And that's how they showed their love for me, and how I show my love for my family and my children. Um, Professionally, I lead in the same way. At Wrightwood, we do not lower our standards when students struggle. We increase support. I hold administrators accountable for quality. I follow up through consistency because students deserve excellence from every adult in that building. I always say students don't get a do over. They don't get a second chance. They don't get to repeat a year. For me, support is unlimited, but expectations remain firm. So that's how I view high expectations, as a form of love. I love what I do. I love the people I work with, and I think about, I work with we're elementary and middle school kids,
Yeah.
and I told my eighth graders, because we are in Illinois and Chicago, we have a system of K through 8. I
Okay.
told my eighth graders last year, I said, I love you. And I know, and all of them laughed. I said, I know it makes you uncomfortable because you don't hear it, but I do love you. And because I love you, I have high expectations for you.
Man, that is so, so, so important. And even as you stated that, you telling them that you love them and, them laughing, and because they may not have heard it,
Hmm. And they don't
speak.
know what love looks like.
Man, that is so important for those young people, and to have someone there that understands, what it takes to achieve excellence. Which, have you mentioned that you hold those who are in charge or those who are entrusted to lead them at a high expectations, because that's one thing you have to kind of prepare them. So once they get that foundation, it's better for them later. And as I was listening to you, you kind of remind me of one of my guests that was on earlier, Dr. Ross. He was my professor in college, and his class was one of the classes that everyone was telling us, man, don't go to that class because it's hard. But when I end up going to the class, it was because of the high expectation he have of his students,
Mhm.
because he didn't, he went to some of the most Ivy League colleges, and having that high expectation really challenged us. But once you go through it, and which you are doing for your students, helping them to be more prepared when they go to the next level. And I think that high expectation is really important. So which leads me to my next question. What does it mean to intentionally affirm black male identity in today's climate? I know you tell your group of students that you love them, but what does it mean to intentionally affirm black male identity in today's climate?
For me, I think it means that we have to be aware or cognizant of the fact that as a man of color, a black man, that society quietly tells us who we're supposed to be, and that I have to address that myth by showing the students I work with, the males that I work with, that they see themselves as scholars, they see themselves as enough, they see themselves as leaders. And that's why we intentionally, highlighted this month HBCU, so you can see black scientists, you can see black leaders around you, that you can see black men in your life. We do a thing at our building called Tied to Greatness. We bring men of color into the building, fathers, uncles, grandfathers, and we have them teach their boys how to tie ties, and sometimes we're teaching them how to tie ties. So we speak openly about the identity and leadership and lived experiences, and affirmation is part of our instruction. It's not just an add-on. We have an affirmation that I say every day in our building, which says you are truly valued and appreciated. And I say it to every student in the building, but it's when I speak to the gentleman in my building, I give them a fist bump and I, call them, yes, sir. How are you, sir? Young man, how are you doing today? And you just, you walk in the way, you walk in that way, and they pick that, they notice you, and that affirms who they are and lets them know that they can be whatever they want to be. We're in elementary school, as I told you. We recently had an alumni picnic, and to see all of our former students come back for an elementary school and say that, my leadership and the leadership of others in the building impacted their life and helped them be the father that they are, the doctor that they are, the manager that they are. So, just an example is how we affirm them.
Man, and that is so important. As you know, I've heard the saying that it's easier to become what you see. And
Hmm.
that's what you just explained or shared with us. For those students to see other black men and being affirmed and being reminded, helps them to develop the mindset. And it's never too early. Well, it's the earlier the better. But as you state, when they see others who look like them, it helps them to become who they can be.
And we try to have as many males across grade levels as possible because people need to see what that looks like, what a man looks like, what a man looks like, a black man looks like when he shows up every day for work.
Correct.
Men in my building wear ties. We want to show this is how we look, this is how we represent.
Oh, yeah, man, it is important. It's always easier to become what you see. And if they
Hmm.
don't see it, and especially we know sometimes, it's unfortunate that some of the homes from some of the communities that some of the students are coming from, they may not have the example, especially our black boys and males of color, they may not have the example. So coming to a school environment, it should create that space for them to see what is possible with those they come across. So my next question to you is, how do we actively rewrite the narrative while honoring the truth of our history?
um hmm, that's a great question, and I've thought about it. Personally, I think that I know that I'm tired of seeing black men reduced to narrow stories that ignore our complexity, our contribution to excellence. We never talk about all the wonderful things that we're doing. I think that it's important to mention that even in our society at this point, time, and I don't like to politicize a lot of things, but the thing that happened with former President Obama, and I think it's important to mention at this time on President's Day, to minimize the work that he and his wife had done as leaders. So we rewrite the narrative by focusing on the data. Professionally, I counter these narratives with evidence. I use growth data. I use instructional outcomes, leadership success stories to challenge the deficit thinking. I think that's how we rewrite the narrative. We use the facts, we use the data. People lie, data doesn't lie, numbers don't lie. I publicly share my school story, like you said, on social media. I show our progress to show people what is possible when students and educators support with dignity and high expectations for students. For a school of, I run a school of predominantly African American students who are outperforming everybody else in the district. It's because I tell kids, you can do what you want to do, go where you want to go, have access, and make it happen.
Well, and that is so commendable. As you state that your students are doing much better than other students in the school district.
Hmm.
But that comes from your leadership, as you state. You have high expectations,
Hmm.
not only of yourself, not only of the students, but those who are interested. Uh, you know, those who are in the care
Yeah.
are
And
of
I,
care
and
for
I
the
appreciate that, Dr. Cross, but I have to say this. I'd be remiss if I don't say this. Yes, I lead the ship, but it's the people who work with me that make it happen every day. I do not do this work alone, and I am proud that I work with a group of people who share in the belief that our children do not need to be minimalized and that they can do whatever they want to do. We don't always see eye to eye on everything, but we see eye to eye on that.
and that is powerful. And for all those who are in leadership role, and yes, it takes a group of people. But you said something that is really important. They share the belief.
Hmm.
If you believe in the students, they also believe in the students. If you believe that students can excel, they believe. And I think having a team, having a shared vision, is really important, especially when it comes to honoring those who have paved the way for us to be here.
Yeah, and I think, one more thing, and I can go on and on, but I think it's important. Like I tell people all the time, adults, let's not leave out the human factor for adults. Adults like to win too. And when
Yeah,
adults see kids win, they feel like they're winning. Everybody likes to be a winner.
I believe so. I believe so. Everybody wants to. It doesn't matter how old you get. That
Yeah.
you're not going to lose that. Everybody wants
Everybody
to
wants to
win.
be a part of a winning team. I don't want to be on the losing team. I don't want to be at a losing school.
That's right. That's right. That is so true. And that is so true. And that takes, but it also takes, you holding yourself to the same expectations, because you know what it takes to, and it extend to those who
Mhm.
work with you. So my next question, which is about unlocking dreams through education. So how can we ensure education today unlocks dreams rather than limits imagination?
I think that we've got to change our mindset around how we teach, how we instruct. I believe imagination is sacred. No child should be taught to shrink their dreams to match the limits of the system. Children ought to be allowed to have a voice in classroom, to share, to turn and talk, to be able to expose how they came up with different ideas, how it's relevant to them. So I think we unlock dreams in education by giving children voice, by protecting electives, enrichment, and funding, bringing people into schools who have different avenues of success. Success looks very different now. And you need
Correct.
to have an opportunity for children to see what success looks like for them and make it meaningful and not just a mechanical thing. So that's how we unlock it, making it relevant and allowing them to express themselves and their freedoms.
Man, that is true. That is true. But I will say this, as you said, because I just want to repeat it, that we should not make the students shrink um, to the limit of the system.
Right.
Yeah, we should not make them shrink to the limit of the system, or what they may have heard, or what their community or where they're coming from.
Hmm.
They should not shrink to that, but keep rising higher and tap so they can tap into their greatness. Which leads me to my next question. What responsibility do successful black men have to create access for those coming behind them? I know you talk about mentorship. I know you talk about programming. So, what responsibility do successful black men have to create access for those coming behind them?
Um, I think there is an intergenerational responsibility that we have. There is a quote, and I don't know it right offhand, but I think personally, I never forget that someone advocated for me in a space when I was not in the room. Someone spoke my name when I was not in the room and spoke it favorably. I think that we owe it to each other. We owe it to each other to speak someone's name when they're not in the room. We pay it forward by mentoring aspiring leaders. We pay it forward by writing recommendations. So many people ask you to write a recommendation, and and I know people will not do it in a timely manner
Correct.
because they feel like it's not their job or it's not going to benefit them, but it does benefit you because it benefits somebody else. We help young professionals navigate their certification and leadership programs, letting them know that you have to be qualified to do the work that you do. We help them in career decisions. We invite them to our space to observe us and have conversations about how they can be successful. And we have to also talk about, and I'm learning this as I have gotten older as a professional, we have to talk about how to navigate the complexities of race and culture and climate to be successful.
Yes, you said something that is very important: intergenerational responsibility.
Hmm.
You know, as important as it is, do you see us as black men really practicing the intergenerational responsibility, especially to create and provide opportunities for the next generation? I know you do it, but from your, do you think we should be doing it more, or
I think we should do it more. I think that I don't know if I've always done it. I think
okay?
I do it more now that I've gotten older, that I've gotten more comfortable in my position because I look at succession planning more than I did before. I think that when young men of color get in positions, they're so happy to be in that position, they often forget that sometimes you have to reach back and pull somebody else along and find a space for somebody else. I have a personal experience. I remember when I was in transition for a job many years ago, and I was talking to a colleague, a frat brother and a colleague, and I applied for a position. And at that time, I had more education than he had, but he would have still been my boss. He said, I can't hire you because you're more educated than I am, and you may very well end up with my job.
Wow,
But see, what's for you is for you,
correct.
not for me. But see, that's a spiritual thing, that's a belief thing. And so often we're afraid that somebody's going to take what we have. Nobody can take what's yours. And I don't think we as black men, young black men particularly, are comfortable enough in our positions to say, you know what, I can help somebody else get to where I am or get a position that works for them or put them on to something that may fit for them.
And you know what? That is so. Um, Not to say it's a sad thing, but as you said, some of the younger generation, even maybe older than I am,
Mm,
are not so comfortable in their space. And if you're not comfortable, or think you have the capacity, that's where we become barriers to the possibility of someone else, and we have to get past that. And I think which I talked about a couple of days ago, the psychology of oppression,
mhm.
where we take on this belief that we think from a deficit and a scarcity mindset, which is also a part of the conditioning to hold the system may be there, but we know become a part of the system by holding each other back.
Yes.
Um,
And I don't think we mentor each other enough. I think some of us get into jobs and we think, I'm so damn glad to have this job. I can't focus on somebody else getting a job. That's your mission, not my mission. But it is our mission because somebody got you to where you are. Somebody spoke your name. Speak somebody else's name, but we're afraid to do that, and we get so consumed with our own place and our own role. That's not going to help us move forward as a race or help us move forward as professionals.
Man, and I think that's maybe one of the biggest barrier to our progress.
Hmm.
Not so much the system. We know it exists, but it's us. Once we get there, we think, oh, I can't help you. And especially in your case, where it was, you think it'd be somebody who would help you, somebody who is a part of your
Hmm.
group, but they didn't. And we experience that every day. I've experienced it, but I just want to highlight this that one of the listeners share education unlocks dreams, and this is coming from Berry 8966. I think
Mm.
this over on YouTube. Education unlocks dreams when it teaches students how to think, not what to think. Classrooms should nurture purpose, creativity, and courage, and not just memorization. But I think you said something pertaining to that in regards to how we go about educating our students. But I just want to acknowledge that one, which leads me to, and I'm trying to get through as many questions as possible. But we'll see wherever it stops. And
Mm.
I just want to tell the listeners this may not be our last conversation with Dr. Lewis as we continue this journey of talking to Black men in leadership, and not only in leadership, but those who are demonstrating what is what we should do as leaders, especially paving the way for the next generation. So that leads me to my next question. At what point does resilience need to evolve into strategy, ownership, and institution building? Resilience. We are resilient, but
Resilience and refinement. How do you build resilience and refinement? Personally, I learned resilience early. I learned how to keep going, adapt, and push through. And I do believe that that is a generational thing. I learned early on you get up, you go, you do what you have to do. You don't whine, you don't cry about it. Keep it moving, push through. I am going through a growth process at work where I'm having to reflect because everyone I know now wants to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to know that they're valued and appreciated. And I believe in that. But I can't affirm everyone and do everything at all times. You got to have some tenacity, some inward something that tells you to push on when nothing else but the will tells you to push on. So professionally, I've learned that resilience alone is not enough. At Wrightwood, we move from reacting to challenges to building repeatable systems, clear instructional frameworks, and leadership routines. We document our work, and our success does not disappear when we move on. So it's about documentation, it's about doing things repeatedly. So that's what resiliency looks like now in my life. It's about pushing through, looking at challenges as opportunities, reaffirming people consistently. And it may not be something I necessarily believe in for me, but I have to adapt and do what other people need to be successful. So that's what resiliency for me is, more of a refinement of skills.
and as you said, move. We have to move from reacting to challenge.
Hmm.
And when I looked at you have been in education for over 20 years, and you just
Over 30
mentioned that
years.
over 30 years, yes. And
Yes.
you just mentioned that you are at a stage where you are growing, that you're
Hmm.
challenging yourself to grow, where some people may not have done as much as you have done, or serve and become so complacent. And even though we are resilient, as you mentioned, we have to move from reacting and start using different strategies
Yeah.
so we can
And I see resiliency as recalibrating. I am recalibrating who I am to meet the needs of the people and the children and the families I work with. It's all about recalibration.
Man, and that's important. I just want to highlight a comment here. This is coming over from LinkedIn. Um, this is such a great source of empowerment for Black men. Thank you. And that's R. Troy Wilkins over there on LinkedIn. I appreciate the engagement. But I really like that perspective,
Mhm.
move from reacting to challenges. Yes, we can bounce back. We have it in us, but let's start bouncing forward even
Mhm.
before the challenge, because we do have that also in us. We don't have to wait for things to happen. Now, we should not be, especially this time, we should not be waiting. We see the playbooks. We have seen all the playbooks,
Mhm.
so we don't have to wait for things to happen before we start
And
moving.
we don't have to be a victim all the time. I don't like that victim mentality. I'm a winner. Stop being the victim. Things don't happen to us.
That's right. That man. You know what? We need to say that so every day. I'm a winner. I'm a winner.
You know what? I will say this jokingly just to lighten the vibe a little bit. I learned in a relationship years ago. As in a relationship, people say, you took advantage of me. You did this to me. Nobody does anything to us
Nope.
we don't allow them to do.
Yep. Yep.
So
That's
that's
right.
what resiliency is move on.
That's right. That's right. And as I said, man, we have to move from this victim
Yes.
mindset. Um, we got to every day. We should get
Mm,
up and say, "I'm a winner." And
yes.
when that becomes our norm, we
Hmm.
ain't going to be waiting for something to happen before we do something. And we really need to move towards that approach to life. So in regards to the power, um, um, well, let me ask this. I don't think I did ask this question. How do we shift today's generation from survival thinking to ownership and legacy building?
I think what I would like to do is I want young people to experience more than just making it. Not just that I'm going to make it or I made it. I want them to experience stability, ownership, and choice. I want to introduce students and families. I work to that, introducing them to high expectations through high school pathways, selective enrollment, entrepreneurship, leadership roles, financial literacy, normalizing long term planning and future thinking versus just short term rewards and compliance. Years ago, I heard a saying that our generation wants to go from crumbs to gravy, but it's a whole process to make gravy.
Hmm.
It doesn't happen overnight. So I
Yeah.
want to make sure that to get ambition beyond survival is that it takes time to build where you want to go and to look at long term planning and future building.
And that is so important, and be willing to trust the process. But have an idea of where we want to go, and get up every day with a winning mindset.
Mhm.
I'm a winner. I'm not a
Yeah, and I
victim.
think also Dr. Cross is that for me, ambition beyond survival is very spiritual. I think that people need to find a faith, practice their faith, and believe in their faith, and that will help them to get where they need to go. It has helped me get where I need to go.
And that is so, and a great reminder.
Hmm.
A great ambition beyond survival, because a lot of us think from survival. That's what we have seen, that's what we have
Hmm.
you know experienced. But as you said, find that the faith that you can tap into.
Hmm. And
And
that comes from church or wherever you want to find your faith. There's a song that I love. He's preparing me, and I know that I'm being prepared for what's next in my life. This is not it.
that's right. That's right. That's right. And once, I tell you, with that mindset, it helps with everything. Even when things come at you that you don't like, it helps you to navigate. Even if the thought is there, you don't
Hmm.
stay there too long, because you know what, this is not it. So I'm
Yes.
going to this maybe this that's happening is for a reason. Let's
Mhm.
let's look for the reason. Let me look for the reason.
We said one of the things we've shared at our school in Black History Month, but it's so true, and I learned this during the pandemic. um, Not the pandemic, when Hurricane Katrina hit, an older lady in her 90s said, life is like a storm. We're either on our way to a storm, we're either in a
Mhm.
storm or on our way out of a storm. Life is cyclical, so things
Wow.
change.
Oh yeah, it's not going to be a storm forever. We just gotta get up with the right mindset every day.
Mm-hmm.
Take what we can get out of it, but prepare for what's going to happen after this season
Mm-hmm.
or the hurricane pass. Which leads me to my next question, which is the power of representation. When did representation impact you personally, and how do you now serve as representation for others? Well, all of what you have been saying so far,
Mm-hmm.
kind of answer, but if you don't mind,
Sure.
um,
Um, Personally, seeing Black men lead with confidence and integrity reshaped what I believed was possible for myself. So, seeing Black men in leadership roles, when I think about my personal life and professionally, I recognize that my presence as a Black principal matters. I know that who I am matters to the students I walk with. Teachers of colors often see my leadership um, and my family conversations and the way I move as things they want to do. Um, I lead with intention because representation teaches even when I'm silent. My representation teaches others around me even when I don't say a word.
wow, and that speaks volume. You know, they should know that you're there, even if you're not saying
Hmm.
anything.
My
Um,
impact.
Go ahead.
It's my impact.
Well, yes, 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 and that is so important. So before I get to, I know we're getting to the top of the hour, so
Mhm.
I may not ask all the questions I have left here, have leave here to ask. But before I ask my final question, if you don't mind, share where I think you may have said it before, but share where they can support you and the work that you're doing. And if and you may want to say something to students who are in the process of doing their dissertation, because they may
Um,
need your help.
well, I will say this: I had my first doctoral student defend his dissertation this past weekend. He did a phenomenal job. He didn't just defend it; he conquered it.
Oh
He did
wow.
a great job. You can support me by finding me on LinkedIn, David Lewis, or looking me up at CICS Wrightwood. We have a lot of things going on, so please support me and the work that I do and the children and families that I serve.
Okay, man, that's great. That's great.
And I'll
So
give you my information. If you put it out on your website, I'd appreciate that.
oh yeah, most definitely. I will make sure I can also put it in the description after we finish here. So I think I have enough time to ask two more questions, but I just wanted
Okay.
to get that out the way
All right.
before we get to the end. Right. So I'm just going to ask this question in regards to protecting the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what behaviors, mindset, and standards must be modeled more intentionally?
I think how we move has to be modeled, and it's not so much what we say is, but how we move, and when I say how we model our emotional regulations, that we're not always hair on fire, that we're calm individuals, that we're transparent, that we show humility, especially in difficult situations, that we're able to say we're wrong and publicly admit when we're wrong and correct those errors. And I think that will garner respect from others. So I think that's how we protect the next generation, by showing them how men move and how men act and how we take responsibility for our actions.
Yeah, I think that is really really important. Modeling what we would want them to see, not just selling them, but
Mhm.
become the example of it. All right. So, what is the legacy you are actively building, that will unlock dreams for generations you may never meet?
Oh wow. I want my legacy to be, beyond my resume. I want my legacy to be beyond my resume. Professionally, I hope that I am building a leadership and opportunity pipelines that are rooted in dignity, equity, and preparation. I hope that I'm developing teachers into leaders and students into learners and future professionals through my doctoral mentoring and my coaching and community partnerships. I hope that I am expanding leadership, literacy, and opportunities. Um, for me, my legacy is not my title. My legacy is more than my title. It is the number of lives that I impact and that I move forward with confidence, that I move forward with clarity and courage. Because somebody believed in me, I want people to believe in themselves. I want them to be prepared, and I want to create spaces for brilliance and excellence. And excellence. That's how I honor the past, how I elevate identity and unlock generational dreams.
And that is so good. That is so and a great forward look thinking perspective
Mhm.
to have. So if one young black boy is watching this conversation tonight, what do you want him to believe about himself?
That he can be whatever he wants to be. And I think about one black boy, not a black, he's a black boy who's set in the school where I currently teach when I was there years ago, the first male valedictorian. And I'll throw his name out there because I know he won't mind. Dr. Kevin Stonewall, who's been noted for helping to find and cure the colon cancer, sat in that building, was an eighth grader, and who said that because of my leadership, I taught him he could do and be anything that he wanted to be. When he left the school, he said he was prepared for high school and had everything he needed to do it. Someone who didn't speak up when he was valedictorian gave his valedictorian speech and made me cry because it's the first time I heard his voice. I
Wow.
want any black boy who is listening to this know that he has a voice, he is being heard, and he can do and be whatever he wants to be. And don't let anybody tell you what you can't do and can't be.
Man, that is so powerful and a great reminder. And as we come to the end of tonight's, this evening's conversation, I want to thank all those who have tuned in with us. I really appreciate it. So, as we close tonight's conversation, I want to remind you of something powerful. Legacy is not accidental, it is constructed. We have to be intentional in creating the legacy we want. And you can look in the description for more information on how to connect with Dr. Lewis. And Dr. Lewis, any final word before we go?
I want to thank you, Dr. Cross, for this opportunity to share my story and share the story of the school and the people who have impacted my life. And hopefully, somebody else will gain something from this. So, thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, having you here to share as well. I see the work that you're doing, and I'm going to keep, building on this conversation as we go forward. So, listeners, thank you for being here. The Black Male Impact is where positive changes are inspired. Where we bring Black men who are doing the work to share their perspective and what we need to do as we move forward. So I want to say thanks to everyone who have joined us tonight. And remember, you can still share this conversation with someone. They will benefit from it. So again, thanks and I appreciate it.
Thank you.